this stuff.
Yeah, this is really cool. And well, I mean, I think we all have like our own systems. No one's is perfect. So this is mine. I actually ripped this off and duplicated it from a team that I used to be on. And now this is kind of my main system. So most of my clients, just so everybody has like a perspective on what's leading up to this meeting. Most of my clients, I'm either getting from my first time homebuyer workshops. So we've met before. And then if we are setting up the meeting, I've texted with them, I've got an idea of budget, pre-approval. I'm not really meeting with people that aren't pre-approved or at least don't have a really good understanding of their budget based on their own independent research, or maybe like having a preliminary conversation with their bank or with a lender. Or the other source of my buyer business is from referrals. So those would be people that I like, if I've been referred to them from another agent, I will have had like a 5 to 10 minute phone call with them just to get an idea on their timeline, what their budget is, and all of that before we go and set up the buyer consultation. So
it's really good context, because so the people that are listening in, maybe next week we have somebody that maybe does the pre-call during the buyer consult so that we can kind of give some different perspectives. So the background knowledge is super important. So I was really glad that we kind of had a little communication ahead of time, because your price point is certainly different than mine.
Yeah, a bit. And then I'll just share really quickly with my screen before we actually dive into the conversation. So typically I have this printed out, and I'm working off of this kind of conversation doc. It's a lot of stuff that some things I don't ask. It really just depends. If I wouldn't ask like how many are living in your home unless they're like, oh, I have kids. And I'd be like, oh, great. Like, how many kids do you have? Like, I'm really careful about kind of walking that fine line of like fair housing, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then some of this stuff, like I already would know about them ahead of time. Like, is this your first home purchase? So obviously if they came to my workshop, most likely, yes, it's their first home purchase. But what I'm doing is I'm taking this, I'm setting them up on an MLS search based on this. But some of this stuff I can't really directly correlate. It's just more for me to have an idea of what that property looks like. So typically I would have this printed out in front of me and I'd be walking them through it. Right now I'm actually in Maine, so I'm not in Boston, and I don't have a printer here. So I'm just going to walk through and I would take some notes like on a notepad.
Okay.
Okay.
So Kimberlee, when we're done, do you care to upload that into the file documents in that internal page so people can kind of R&D it from you?
I can definitely do that. Okay, cool. So we're going to just jump right into the conversation. So Jen, how are you doing?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm well. So I know we chatted like on the phone briefly, and you kind of gave me a good idea of what you're looking for. And that was awesome. We may talk about some of that stuff again, but basically I've got this sheet that I want to go through, talk a little bit more about what that ideal property looks like for you. And then what I can do is get you set up on a search from there so you can start getting properties. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Awesome. So Jen, what price point are you looking in? Like, what price range are you thinking?
So, based on kind of our previous conversations, and I met with the lender that you suggested, so thank you so much for that. I'm guessing that I need to be somewhere around 650 to 700, 700 being the very top end of where I feel comfortable being. Just, that's kind of where I think that I fit.
Okay, awesome. And then what neighborhoods are you thinking that you might start looking in?
So there were a couple that, I'm kind of relocating the area. So I'm just, getting a feel for things and where things are at. But I like the feel of Dorchester, that Jamaica Plain area, kind of those subdivisions or areas in Boston.
Okay. Awesome. So what we can do is basically I'll start you out with that. But as we continue to explore, like if you're not seeing what you're really looking for in those neighborhoods, I'm happy to add other neighborhoods or make suggestions in that capacity. And we'll just start where you said, based on our conversation, you're thinking like really closer to fall. Since it's spring, you wouldn't be seeing a property on the market that you're probably going to be able to purchase in the fall, which is fine. So we're going to use this time in the next few months as really like exploring the market since you are new to the area, and we can make adjustments as we go with that search.
Okay. So will we get to look at houses now, ahead of that?
So typically we're not going to be scheduling private showings in the meantime, because we want to be really cognizant of the seller's time. If you aren't in a position to be making an offer until the fall, like you mentioned, we wouldn't want to take up the seller's time where you wouldn't be able to put an offer in. Now, if that timeline changes for you and you realize that maybe you can make that purchase sooner, we can certainly start to schedule showings once you're at that point. But what I always suggest is, like, if you're really just in that exploratory situation, you're definitely not going to be making offers. It certainly wouldn't hurt for you to start exploring open houses because, and this is just in the situation of not being in coronavirus because there are no open houses right now, but so yeah, you can certainly start exploring like neighborhoods that way. And I'm happy to kind of jump in and attend any open houses with you if you're in that position. But for now, we won't be scheduling private showings.
Okay. So right now, because of the coronavirus, is there any way for me to get kind of sneak peeks at some houses other than still photos?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of property virtual tours available. So any properties that show up in your search that you're interested in, just let me know, because a lot of times we can look and see if there's a virtual tour available. And it's really cool. There's options where you can like walk yourself through the house. It's almost like, did you ever play like The Sims or any of those kind of games where you can go? Yeah. So there's a lot of those options available right now. So just let me know what properties you're interested in and I can get you those virtual tours.
That sounds good. I'm so excited to get started, and it's so fun to look at houses, even though, you know, I can't buy anything until the fall. I like to look.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. There's a lot of people like you. So are there any areas that you definitely don't want to live in?
You know, I'm going to kind of let you guide me a little bit. I'm new to the area. I've got a couple of kids, so I'm, interested in, clearly a safe place to be, some place that is more family oriented, where we can go for bike rides and walks and those types of things. So, I know that the subdivisions I mentioned before are the areas I really like. I'll let you help kind of maybe steer me away from maybe some areas that you feel would not be a good fit for my family.
Okay, sure. So there's only so much I can like tell you directly just to comply with fair housing, but I can definitely get you all the information that can help you kind of make those kind of decisions. Does that sound okay?
That sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned fall. Is there any flexibility in that if it takes a little bit longer, or do you anticipate maybe you'll be able to potentially put offers in sooner? Is your situation going to change in that capacity?
Well, so the reason for the wait is honestly the down payment. So I want to be able to make a great down payment. Right now I am in a lease. The lease isn't up until September. However, I don't know how flexible maybe my landlord might be. So right now I'm looking to be into something, I don't know, the beginning of September, beginning of October, somewhere in there. So I also, not only do I not know, I guess, if my landlord would let me move out early, I don't know if they would let me stay an additional month. So it's going to be a pretty tight time frame.
Okay, so just want to touch on that point you brought up about the down payment. Have you had a conversation with a lender yet? I know that you said that was kind of just based on some rough calculations that you did. You expected to be in that price point. Have you actually gone into that pre-approval process yet?
So I just started it, honestly, after our first conversation. I talked with, your preferred lender. You had given me a couple of names, and so I just kind of reached out. I'm planning on doing a conventional loan. So that down payment, I would like to be somewhere around that 20% mark, mainly because, I want to avoid PMI if at all possible. So.
Okay, cool. So one suggestion I'm going to make is let's definitely circle back around with whoever out of that list of 3 lenders you felt the most comfortable with and have them run a couple scenarios for you. So I know that we've talked briefly and I mentioned that the market is pretty hot, but there are still lots of opportunities available. And sometimes what we can do is maybe not a property that's first week on the market, but 2 or 3 weeks on the market. That gives us a position to start negotiating a little bit harder. And sometimes what we can do is we can get a closing cost credit, and the lender can apply that credit to buy out your mortgage insurance. So it may actually put you in a position where you could go with putting a little bit less down, but buy out that PMI. And sometimes the difference between 15% down to 20% down is such a small difference on your monthly payment that you may barely notice that. And I know you said avoiding the MI is really important to you. So we should circle back around, have a conversation, and see what those numbers might look like for you to potentially make a move a little bit sooner.
So I don't 100% understand that. Is that something that you can explain to me in a little bit greater detail, or is that something that I would need to go to the lender for?
So I would definitely recommend talking to the lender. That's a little bit more their field of expertise. But what they can do is typically they're putting together a sheet for you. Sorry, someone just popped up. I'm trying to meet everybody. So it's very distracting when someone pops in. Typically what they're doing is they're giving you an idea of what your total cost to close will be. So that includes your down payment and all closing costs that are specific to the state of Massachusetts. In that, they would quote you on what your mortgage insurance, all that is going to be in your monthly payment. Now, often with mortgage insurance, they can actually buy it out up front. So it's a one-time cost that the lender would be buying it out at the like closing time. And it's, I don't know the numbers. I want to say it's like a few grand, maybe $6,000. That's not my field of expertise so much. But I do know that that is an option available. So if we were to, let's say it's $6,000, for instance, and now obviously don't quote me, I'm not the lender in this situation, but let's say it is $6,000. We could potentially get a closing cost credit from the seller. So negotiate that into our offer, where we could then have the lender apply that credit towards buying out your mortgage insurance up front. So you're not going to be having MI, but potentially putting less than 20% down. Do you follow? I know that's a little bit more like higher level complex, but.
No, I think I'm following. Yeah, so I can reach out to the lender and ask those questions. So, I mean, if that were the case, I still have the issue of the lease.
Sure.
And I really don't want to have to make, a rent payment plus a mortgage payment.
Yeah, totally understand. So if your lease is up September, one cool thing is actually if you close, so I'm going to walk backwards a little bit. So let's say you closed August 1st on a place. Your first mortgage payment actually wouldn't be due until October 1st. So that gives you a little bit of leeway in that timeline. And now same being if you close anytime after July 1st, your first mortgage payment would be due September 1st. So that's giving us like a little bit more breathing room in that timeline. But again, let's just chat with the lender after this and see what your options would look like financially, because of course I want you to be making the best financial decision for yourself.
Sure.
Okay. So Jen, can you remind me, is this your first home purchase or have you owned before?
I've owned a home before. Like I said, I relocated the area. So when I wasn't buying in a different market. I'm from the Midwest, and so all of this is just a little bit different for me.
Sure. Well, that's what I'm here for, is to walk you through the whole process. Are you looking for just a condo, or are you open to single families or multifamilies at all?
I would probably prefer a single family, condo being the second choice. I'm not interested in a multifamily.
Okay, awesome. And, just want to make sure if we do end up going the condo route, do you have any pets at all? Because some condo associations can be tricky about their rules with pets.
I do. I have a mini golden doodle.
Oh, that's awesome. What's your dog's name?
Her name's Dolly.
Oh, I love it.
I was going to get her, but apparently she wandered out with the children. So I'm a Dolly Parton fan. So her name is Dolly.
Oh, that's adorable. I have a dog myself. A lot of my clients are dog lovers as well. It makes it fun for sure.
Here she is.
Oh,
just in case I needed a morning of kids.
My dog is laying on the floor next to me sleeping right now. Now, what kind of location would you guys be looking for? Are you okay with a busier street? Do you really only prefer a side street? Doesn't matter?
I prefer a side street. I honestly really don't care for a corner lot, even though I know that most people kind of like that. I don't like to have the additional traffic. So we do play outside a lot. So I prefer, kind of into the neighborhood just a little bit.
Okay, awesome. And then I know this isn't your first time buying, but it is your first time in the Boston area. Do you have any questions or concerns about the buying process that you want to make sure I answer for you?
Well, I think I'm interested in kind of seeing, what I can get for the money. I mean, it's clearly a step up in like average price point here from where I'm at. I've never really lived in a condo, so honestly, it's appealing to me because some of the maintenance type things are covered. So I would be curious on that. Like, what is typical to be covered, what are those association fees, just those kind of things. So yeah, it's just a little different.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, what you're going to be seeing versus coming from the Midwest is you're going to notice it's going to be a lot less for your dollar. Unfortunately, that's just kind of what we're dealing with. I know I'm not super familiar with the market in the Midwest, but I do know you can get a lot more square footage for a lot less. So that may be one, I guess, sticker shock up front. To your point of condos, though, condos in the Boston area come in all ways, shapes, and forms. So especially in the neighborhoods that you're looking, I would say maybe more so in Jamaica Plain than Dorchester, you're going to see a range of condos. So there's some more like luxury, higher end buildings that you're going to get more amenities with. And with that, you're going to have higher condo fees. Then there's also a lot of like the classic triple deckers that have been converted into condo units. And those are typically smaller self-managed associations, maybe 2 or 3 owners per association. And with that, you're going to have a lower condo fee and also more say in like how you guys want to be allocating your condo fee funds. But the good news is that, so when we get you set up on your search, you're going to see for every property that comes up, you'll see what the condo fee is, you'll see what it covers, and I'm happy to get more of that info for you as well. And that's something that we'll have to explore because the condo fees are going to be a huge range. It's going to be anywhere from like 150 to 200 to like 400, 500, 600, depending on the building. And we'll also want to just be cognizant of your budget because 700 with an additional 500 a month in a condo fee is probably not something that you would love the sound of because it sounds like you don't even really want to push towards that 700 anyways. So the good thing is that we can run all those numbers by the lender. If that's something, if you see a property that you're really interested in, we can have them run those numbers to see what your monthly mortgage payment will be, including that condo fee.
Okay.
Okay, so what would be the minimum number of bedrooms that you guys would be looking for?
I really want 3 bedrooms. I want each of us to have our own bedroom. I could probably make do with 2, but it would have to be way lower in that price point. So if I'm going to go up to that 625, 650, 700, minimum would need to be 3 bedrooms.
Okay, that's definitely doable. What would be the minimum number of bathrooms?
2.
Okay.
2 full bathrooms. I can't share a bathroom with my kid. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely going to limit our options, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
How about parking? Do you guys need off-street parking? Or are you okay with on-street parking?
I'm okay with on-street parking.
Okay, awesome. And then how much yard space? I know you mentioned you like to have kind of that area to play with the kids and stuff. Are you okay with having a small backyard? Do you need to be closer to a park? Any of that kind of stuff?
I'm okay with a small backyard as long as we've got some space that we can play where we're not where we can kind of spread out and throw a ball around and that type of stuff. I would love to be close to a park just to give us some other options. I don't need a large yard though, honestly. It's just me, so I don't really want to have to maintain a large yard. So.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to find a large yard anyway. So I think just keeping in mind, like in order to get that yard space that you're looking for, we're probably not going to be looking at like one of those larger condo associations because a lot of those are like, 5, 6, 7-story buildings. You're not going to have much green space. So we're probably going to be leaning towards those smaller condo conversion associations.
Okay.
And that's something that, I can help you too, is we're going to want to make sure we're checking who gets the yard space because some buildings it's common. Some buildings it might just be deeded to the first floor. So I can walk you through that whole process.
Okay.
And then what would be the minimum square footage you guys would be looking for?
Well, I'm going to lean on you for that. So, I don't know as far as what to expect in the market. What would be the average as far as, I'm not good at, I guess, square feet. I don't know.
Yeah. So we're probably looking at something about like 1,000 to maybe like 1,300 square feet on the top end of things. I'll leave that pretty open on your search criteria for now. And then as we start exploring properties, if you start to feel like stuff on the 1,000 square foot end of things is a little too small for your family, we can always adjust that and filter those out.
Yeah, that sounds good. The 2 bathrooms is probably more important to me than the square footage.
Okay, good to know. And then what about non-negotiables? Do you guys have any of those?
I guess, what do you mean by a non-negotiable?
Yeah, I mean, it ranges for everybody. Some people really, it's really important for them to have laundry in unit. Sometimes it's really important for them to have a dishwasher, those kind of things. Do you have any of those needs and wants?
All of those. Yeah, yes. So I need to have access to some green space. That would be a non-negotiable. So for me, if it was something where I was going to be on the third floor and only the first floor had access to the green space, that's not going to work for me. I would like for it to be the other non-negotiable. I think for me, the more I'm thinking about the bedrooms, I really need the 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Um, the 2 bathrooms at this point, unless I just can't find something, would be a non-negotiable. I do a ton of laundry, so having easy access to that, having it in unit would be something that would be really important to me. And I also cook a lot, especially right now. I am basically a short order cook these days. So being able to have a good space in the kitchen with a good amount of storage.
Okay, awesome. And then just a couple like more fun questions. These aren't going to translate so much into the actual search. But what is your favorite room in the house and why?
The kitchen, hands down, is my favorite room in the house. We like to cook. It does seem like that's where everybody hangs out. So that room is, I like for it to be light. I like for it to be bright.
Okay, awesome. And then are there any certain things that would keep you from buying a house? So I'll just throw out a couple examples. Some people are really particular on the style of property. If there's no basement storage, if it has oil versus gas.
I don't care so much about style. I am more concerned about, I like to walk in and I like for it to be clean. It is hard for me to see past dirty. So I get that I can clean it. And I like to walk in and have kind of a fresh start. So fresh surfaces are important to me, like as far as paint and countertops. I don't really care for much of a project. As far as style though, I could go either way. I love to have a gas stove. That's kind of my preferred cooking method. And that's not, that for me wouldn't be one of the non-negotiables that you mentioned.
Okay, just as long as it's available, as in like you want to have gas in the building so that you could potentially hook up a gas stove in the future.
That's right.
Okay, and you kind of answered my last question there, which was going to be how much work, if any, are you willing to do in a home? So it sounds like you're looking for something that's pretty turnkey.
0 work. I have done all of that. My last house, I actually completely gutted and moved walls and all of those things, and I don't know that I have that in me again.
Okay. So based on everything you're telling me, I think it's definitely reasonable that we can find you a property. I'm just going to share my screen with you now and show you a few things about my team and myself and how we function. And then we'll go from there. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Awesome.
So you're on a team. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to explain that to you right now. All right. So can you see this?
I can.
Perfect. Let's see if we can get this into full screen. Perfect. Okay, so street property team, this is my team, and this is what we call our home buyer system. I think we're in an automatic slideshow. Let me fix this. Okay, so in Massachusetts, I will get to answering your question in just a minute, but in Massachusetts, I'm legally required to disclose to you the difference between agency and non-agency at first meeting, which is what this is. So as a customer, which is non-agency, I can pretty much just open a door for you. Obviously, I have to be honest, but I don't necessarily represent your best interests. It would be like you go to an open house and then you're like, oh, this place is perfect. Kimberlee, I want to offer $650. Can you type up the offer for me? I can pretty much just type words and numbers into the offer and deliver it for you. As a client, which doesn't cost you anything, that's that agency piece that I just mentioned. I have to follow all lawful instructions of the buyer. My loyalty to you is undivided. I have to disclose anything that could affect your position in the transaction. All your information is kept confidential. I owe you accountability, reasonable care, and then I negotiate on your behalf. So some people think, why do I need an agent? All the information is out there on Zillow and Trulia and those different sites. So I think this is really cool that we have all those sites. It used to be that if you wanted to buy a house, you had to walk into a real estate office and they had a book of properties that came out every week. And the agents used to really be the gatekeeper to the properties. And now all that information is available out there for the consumer, which the great thing about that is that people have become so much more educated. So my job has really switched from being that gatekeeper to the properties to being an advisor to help you take all that information, interpret it, and help you make the right decisions. And we've talked about this before, but some buyers think, can I get a better deal by going directly to the listing agent? The reality is the listing agent represented the seller first. The listing agent is sharing part of their commission with the buyer's agent, myself. So the person that really wins if you go directly to the listing agent is the listing agent, because they worked for the seller first. And their loyalty really is to the seller. They're going to want you to pay more, and then they're getting double commission.
But wouldn't they have to sign this agreement with me that they would give me the full representation, or that wouldn't?
It depends on it. It's a case-by-case situation. So first of all, everybody in the transaction has to agree on dual agency. So the seller might not agree. You have to agree. And then they actually go from being more of an agent to a facilitator. They have to just then act as a middleman. So you're not getting the same level of representation as you would having an agent on your side. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I guess I was just wondering if they couldn't, if I had signed an agency agreement, say you had the listing also, then if you could give me like the seller's bottom dollar, basically, where we could cut through some of the negotiations a little quicker.
Yeah, so not quite how it works. And the good thing actually to you is that I don't represent sellers. So you're not going to be put in a position where I would already represent the seller, and then it's going to be a decision of you having to decide if you want to have that lower level of representation. Because if I were to work for the seller already, then I go really from being like an agent to more of a facilitator role. So first of all, if I had the listing, my seller would have to agree to me being the dual agent, and then you would have to agree, and then I can't really like advise either of you. I kind of just have to act as like a middleman to relay all the information. So it's not as high a level of representation to you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just kind of mentioned this, the buy side commission is already coming from the seller's agent, so it's not, you don't have to pay for representation. And then you can call listing agents directly, but many won't call you back because they might not think you're a serious or qualified buyer since you aren't working with a buyer's agent. So this is what we call our VIP program. So it will answer your question. We actually work as a team. Instead of me being a solo agent who's balancing paperwork, scheduling showings, transaction coordination, we actually have a whole team of professionals to help you, which is great for you because everybody has their own individualized role. We're all really highly specialized in what we do. So you get myself as your dedicated buyer specialist. Then you get access to our full-time transaction coordinator, Vincent. He is amazing. His job sounds really simple, but it's so, so important. He keeps track of all the details along the way so that we're not missing any deadlines. Your deposit is never put at risk. And it just makes this whole process a lot smoother and less stressful. And then all of our clients get access to a personal showing assistant. If there's ever a time where our schedules don't align, you're not going to miss out on the perfect property because I can't show it to you. Someone's always going to be there from our team to show you the property.
But it's not going to be you?
Yeah, I would say about 95% of the time it actually is me. But if there ever is a situation where our schedules don't align, the great thing is that somebody from my team will be there to show you the property so that you're not going to miss out. And then I can always go back and check it out myself if needed.
It's like a personal shopper.
Exactly. So what we do, we help you find a property that meets your needs, negotiate to get you the best price, help you find the right financing program, and then we just try to make it as low hassle and fun because it is a really big decision. It's stressful. I know you said this is probably the most that you spent on a property so far. So financially, it's a really big decision. And then
like for the smallest square feet. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then our attorneys and other professionals we work with will actually save you some money because we do so much business with them. So a little bonus.
What do I need an attorney for?
Yep. So in Massachusetts, we are an attorney state. Coming from the Midwest, you may have experienced like a title state. Is that
Yeah.
that's probably okay? Yeah. So we're an attorney state. So what happens is the attorney both represents the mortgage lender and then you, and they do all the closing paperwork. They do all the title search. So it's very similar to what the title company would have done, but it's handled by an attorney.
Okay.
So what we do to help you find the best home. So this is really funny. I pulled these stats from the National Association of Realtors, and I used to always joke, like, no one's looking in the newspaper at all. Like, where are they coming up with this? But I met with this 74-year-old woman who brought me a newspaper ad, and she ended up buying that house. It was so precious. But I'm guessing you're probably looking on different websites, Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, all those different sites, right?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I'm obsessed with it. It's all I look at.
Yeah. So all of those are actually fed from the MLS, which is our agent database. So in Massachusetts, there's over 21,000 homes for sale across the whole state by all companies. So many agents just get you what's active on the MLS, but you're actually missing out on a certain segment of inventory. So we're actually obviously going to get you the active MLS listings because that's probably about 90% of the inventory. But then we're also looking at what we call this hidden market. So these are for sale by owner properties that can often be a really good opportunity to get a good deal. Expired and canceled properties. So those are listings that were on the market and didn't sell for some reason. It's not that they're like the bad listings that no one wanted. There's just so many factors that go into someone's decision to sell. And a lot of times it may just be too stressful to have their house on the market and they may pull it off with all the showings and traffic. But often if we approach those sellers, they may still be willing to sell. So we're going to send you all those properties as well. We can reach out if there's any that you're interested in. And then a couple things to this seller database. So one, I've got a few listings that will be coming on the market that are in our office that they would be happy to sell ahead of time. And two, I'm part of a bunch of agent groups. There's a lot of properties in the Boston area that sell off market. So I'm always keeping an eye out. If I see something that fits your needs, happy to send it your way.
And on those for sale by owners, I mean, sometimes when we're out for walks, like I'll see signs in the yards, and can I just call them? Like, can I just set up a showing so that you don't have to?
So my job is to handle all the showing and setting all of that up. If you're out on a walk and you see a sign in the yard, take a picture and text it to me, and I'll call the owner and set it up for you.
Okay. Does that cost extra since they're not part of the MLS? Like, since they're not on the MLS and there's not, will that cost extra for me, or how does that work?
I would say 99% of the time, these sellers are smart. They realize that they're going to need to offer a commission to the buyer. So very, very, very rarely are they not offering some type of commission to the buyer. And if we do come across a situation where they aren't, there's a few ways that we can negotiate that into the offer. But that's certainly a conversation that we could have on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
That's a very good question. So what we do to help you get the best home at the best price. Obviously, once you find a property, a big part of my job is to help you determine what to offer because the market is so crazy here, and something might be listed at $600,000, but it may go for $650 or $675. So part of my job is to help you determine like what's a really strong offer on this property. And so I'll do a value analysis. I'm looking at comparable sold and active properties. We're also calling the listing agent, finding out what the traffic was like, how many offers they're expecting, and we're using all that information to prepare an offer that's going to be written in your favor and help you win the multiple offer situation. And then I'm presenting it and negotiating all the terms to your benefit. So these are just a few extra things from our VIP buyer program. So we've got this love it or leave it guarantee. So basically what this is if you buy, let's say you buy a condo, and 6 months later, the worst neighbors ever move in upstairs above you. They're like stomping around all the time, playing loud music, and you're like, this is awful. Like, this is not what I wanted. If for any reason you're not satisfied within the first 12 months, we'll sell it for you commission free on the seller side. You'll just have to pay the buyer's agent commission, which will save you thousands of dollars and obviously help you find a new place. So that's just like a little extra peace of mind that you can have with buying. And then we've got a cancellation guarantee. So basically, I kind of tell my clients, working with me is more or less a loyalty agreement. If at any time in the transaction you're not happy with the job I'm doing, could be today, tomorrow, 2 months from now, I don't want you to feel like, oh, I'm stuck with Kimberlee. Like, she kind of sucks. So you can cancel our agreement at any time, because I only get paid when you successfully close and you're happy. So even if you go to an open house tomorrow and you meet like the Brad Pitt of real estate agents, just call me up and cancel the agreement. I might be a little sad, but totally understandable. So which would you rather be? A customer, I can pretty much just open doors for you, type up the offer, you don't get the cancellation guarantee, no raving fan club, and then obviously not as much of a priority as my clients, because they'll get the first call on the best deals. Or we can do full buyer agency representation. Doesn't cost you anything. We just have to do a little bit of paperwork, get you access to those extra properties, the sell for free bonus, the raving fan club, cancellation guarantee, and then obviously you're a priority to me because you're my client.
Well, clearly, I mean, the client side of things, it seems more appealing. I'm a little hesitant, maybe just to, if I'm being honest, to sign. You mentioned that there was maybe some paperwork that would need to be signed. I don't know what that's tying me to or how long that, and I get that I could cancel it, but you know what, I don't know what that looks like or what that entails.
Yep, that's actually what we're going to go over next. So if you're leaning towards client, why don't we do this? I'll walk you through the paperwork. You can see it, understand it. And then what I can do is actually send it to you electronically so that you can take your time to really read it and then make that decision. But we also do have the cancellation guarantee. So anything that you sign, we can cancel at any point if you're not happy. So
is there a time period on the cancellation? Like if I cancel, is there like, 15 days before it really cancels, or is it just an immediate cancellation?
No, so what I ask just out of courtesy is that if there's a specific reason that you're canceling, if there's a certain reason you're unhappy with me and it's something that can be fixed, I just ask that, like, out of courtesy, if you could give me an opportunity to fix it. But there is no time period. You could send it to me an hour from now after you sign stuff and just say, you know what, I changed my mind, we're canceling. And that's okay with me, because I really only want people to work with me that are excited and happy to work with me. All right, so let's stop sharing this. Sorry, I haven't done this on Zoom before. I usually do it on Hangouts, so I'm trying to figure out the tech.
I'm out of character for a second. The buyer presentation is really good.
Oh, thank you.
That's a lot of takeaways for people in how you presented that.
I will say you were like way harder than like any client I've ever had. People are just like, oh, okay, like great, this sounds good.
I feel like people were going to be disappointed with me if I had no objections. The forward pacing in that, like as you're pulling it up, just so I can, kind of chat while you do that. The forward pacing of all of that made sense. The presentation was very professional. It was a no-brainer. I mean, you were pacing me into a very easy yes for the signature. So well thought out presentation. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, usually the response I get is like, they're kind of confused. They're like, well, client, right? Like,
why would I pick
client, right? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Like, I make a little joke out of it. I'm like, yeah, you guys
work for it. The only other thing I would say on this, as you get it pulled up, Sarah Detmore and I were talking this week on our buyer class. This sometimes, if you're doing this via Zoom or Google Hangouts and you've got the ability to have people sign as you're going, it's kind of an assumptive close, because you could say something like, hey, while I've got you on here, I certainly can send this to you to have you read it, but while I've got you on here, I'd like for you to just go ahead and sign it. That way, if you have any technical difficulties, I'm still on the line to help you.
That's a really good idea. My process is typically I'll walk them through everything, explain what they would be signing, and then I put it into Dotloop, send it over to sign. And then I usually just say, once you get that signed, I can get your search set up.
Yep.
And then like every once in a while.
This was really good. I will have my team watch your presentation. You did a very good job.
Every once in a while, I'll have someone, like, maybe they didn't fully listen to me when I was explaining. They may come back with like a question about like, oh, what's this fee, or what's this, and I'll just have to go back and explain that to them. But I haven't had any issue with people like not signing.
No, and I think just for people watching it, we didn't hit hard on like going multiple levels deep on like the search criteria, because we're assuming that you guys all know how to do criteria parts of it. The focus in this was, how do you do it virtually to make it seem like it's in person, that you've got good energy, you're still making jokes, you know, those types of things. The only other tip, and I got it actually, Carrie Worsh is in this group, but her team leader told me, if when you're doing it via Zoom, if you'll have people make their adjustment of their screen so that they can see your arms, you get more body language than you would if it's like, if this is just my face and you can't see it. So just kind of those of you that start doing this for the first time, make those adjustments so you can, you know, get body language too.
That's a really good point. Okay, so this is the point where I would just pull up the paperwork. Let's say Jen has some questions, or she said, yeah, client, awesome. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So what we would do, so I'd be like, okay, awesome. So I will send everything to you electronically through .loop for you to sign, but I just want to walk you through everything so that you understand what you're signing and you're not confused afterwards being like, what is she sending me? Okay, so Jen, this is, oops, sorry. Remember that first slide that we talked about that talked about agency and non-agency?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so this is that document. It's our state required disclosure. It actually dives a little bit deeper into that. And what I want you to know about this is we have this thing in Massachusetts called designated agency and then non-designated agency. So what's important to you about that, it dives a little bit deeper on this second page, is that Keller Williams practices what's called designated agency. So what that means to you is that I'm the only agent in my entire office that represents you. I'm the only agent that knows anything about your negotiating position, your motivation, any of that, which is awesome because KW also happens to be the biggest real estate company. So the chance of you maybe potentially wanting to put an offer in on a Keller Williams listing is fairly high. So the good thing is that agent, those sellers won't know anything about you, which makes it very clean for negotiation. There is non-agency in Massachusetts, which means that technically every agent in that office, if you and I had never gotten connected and you just picked random XYZ brokerage to walk into and you were like, I need a real estate agent. If they didn't practice designated agency, then technically every agent in that office actually works for the sellers. And it's just not as fair for you as a consumer for negotiation.
So when you mean office, you don't mean team. Like if you're saying that your office doesn't have any of my criteria, that's not your team. That's like your KW office.
Correct. That is correct. But within my team, so the only people that would potentially know about you and you would interact with are going to be Vincent, who's my transaction coordinator, and then my executive assistant. But they're not getting into negotiation type of stuff. That's more, they may say, hey, Jen, I need you to send this doc over that I can send to the mortgage broker, or I need to know what your full name is so that we can send it to the attorney. But they're not getting into like budget, timing, any of that important negotiating stuff.
Okay.
That's a really great question, though. So this is the agreement that allows me to represent you. It's between you and Keller Williams. And then on the second page, it designates me as your agent.
Okay.
Just putting a little basic information, what you're looking for, approximate price range. This isn't set in stone. We can adjust this as we go. And then typically what we would do is where you're looking towards the fall, we'd probably make this agreement good for about like 9 months. We can extend it if necessary. I just would put it for that timeline so that you're not having the hassle of having to re-sign stuff. And we've got that cancellation guarantee in place too. So if you want to cancel at any time, no problem. There is no fee for you to work with me, no retainer. So just want to note that about that. In here, this section allows me to legally ask for my portion of the commission in the MLS. So what you'll see in here is that it's equal to the fee offered in the MLS. That just allows me to ask the listing agent for my portion of the commission. What this says, this here, we jokingly call it the don't be a jerk clause, but technically it's called the rollover clause. What this says is if I showed you a property and you're like, wow, I really love this place, but like, I want to cut this chick out of the deal. Like she kind of sucks. And then you went directly to the seller and purchased it. I would technically be owed a commission within 6 months for introducing you to that property, which is why I just jokingly call it the don't be a jerk clause. This allows me to show you properties on the MLS and stuff off the MLS. This says that you acknowledge that I have other clients. None of my clients are going to know anything about you. None of them are going to know and you won't know anything about them. I have to act in compliance with fair housing laws. And then again, this talks about that designated agency. And then this will designate me as your agent. All of this will be subject to the cancellation guarantee.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome. Just a couple more things. So this is a state required disclosure about wire fraud. Unfortunately, there's been a really big issue in the entire country with real estate with wire fraud. And so basically what I tell you is where you're purchasing in state, you shouldn't have to wire money unless you choose to. If you choose to, that's okay. Sorry, someone just popped up as unmuted. If you choose to, that's okay. That's your choice. But what I want you to know is that no one is going to ask you during the transaction to wire money for any reason. So if you get an email that looks like it's coming from the attorney or from the lender that says, hey, wire your funds from closing, pick up the phone and call and just make sure it's legitimate, because these scammers are very, very sneaky about duplicating email addresses and making it look like it's coming from people in the transaction. And then this is one last disclosure, just a state required disclosure about home inspections, talks a little bit about the timing, how to select one. We have some great inspectors we can recommend to you as well. And then what I just want you to know about this is that in Massachusetts, home inspectors are required to be licensed, which you would think is true for all states, but it's not. But it gives you an extra level of protection as a consumer, which is great because they have to carry a special insurance along with that licensing. So if they miss something really big that should have obviously been caught in the home inspection, you're actually protected for an additional 3 years. And then just want to go over this timeline really quickly. Since this is the first time you're purchasing in Massachusetts, I just want to give you an outline of the whole transaction, and I'll send this to you as well, because you'll have a couple deposits due along the way, and I want you to really understand like what money is going to be due at what period of time, just in case you have to move things around or any of that, and I don't want any surprises. So we are actually a 2-contract state in Massachusetts. So we have our first contract is the offer to purchase. That's where it's a short couple-page document outlining all the terms of the offer. What are we going to offer for a price? What are the timelines on deposits? What's our closing date? All that basic stuff. When your offer is accepted, you have a first deposit due. Typically, that's going to be $1,000. So you'll deliver or mail that check once the offer is accepted. From there on, we have a 7 to 10 day period to do all of our inspections, home inspection, any other due diligences you may want to do. I would plan for your home inspection to cost somewhere between like $600 to $700 roughly, just to know like upfront what you're going to have for expenses. If everything goes well with the home inspection and we move forward, you're going to have your purchase and sale. If it does not go well and you're like, oh my gosh, this place is a disaster, I want to back out, you do get your first deposit back, that $1,000, but obviously you're not getting the cost of the home inspection back because the inspector has to get paid. So everything moves forward. House is great. You want to keep along with the transaction. About 14 days in, you'll sign the purchase and sale agreement. So this is our second contract. This is about a 12 to 14 page legal document that your attorney and the seller's attorney are going back and forth with, drawing up. It's just outlining every single detail. But the great thing is that the attorney that a lot of our clients choose to use will actually do a free review of that purchase and sale. So you understand you're not signing away your firstborn child or anything like that. Not all attorneys will do that review for free. So just something I want to mention. At that time, you have a second deposit due. This is typically 5% of the purchase price. So just keep that in mind. It's a pretty big chunk of money. And that will be delivered via a bank check. We get you all the details, so don't worry about that once we go through the transaction. And then the rest of this is really mortgage, loan application, appraisal. Plan on your appraisal costing $500 to $600. The lenders that I recommended to you include those fees into their quotes. So it's not going to be an additional surprise of a cost. And then typically we have our loan commitment about a week or two before closing. Once we get the clear to close, we'll do a final walkthrough and then you're a new homeowner.
Well, that seems pretty slick.
Yeah, so this is usually about 30 to 45 days, just for you to have in mind. And the very last thing, this is just, unfortunately, I had to put this together because I had some clients that thought it would be okay to call me at 11 o'clock at Saturday night. So this is just an outline. Okay? What was that?
That's not okay. I thought we were friends.
This is just a general outline of my business hours. what I say is, if you just send me a text or an email about something, let's say 8:00 at night, and it's not time sensitive, if it's not urgent, time sensitive, this is a general idea of when you could hear back from me. Obviously, if we're in an active negotiation, that changes. Of course, if you see a property on a Sunday and you're like, we need to put an offer in right away, like you don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, Kimberlee's off on Sunday, like I can't reach out to her. That doesn't really apply. This is just more for like non-urgent stuff, or any questions. And then just a little blurb about open houses. We talked about this a little bit. A lot of times, just keep in mind the agent that is at the open house does not necessarily represent the seller. Sometimes they may just be someone from that agent's office. Feel free to ask them questions. They may or may not know the information. I'm happy to get you any information that you have follow-up questions on. And then don't be shy if you're just kicking around open houses before you're ready to really actively shop. Feel free to open cabinets, open closets. You want to make sure that like the property could potentially work for you. And then, of course, if you happen to just go to an open house, this happens sometimes, is you might not be in that shopping window yet. Like this might be a few months out, but you might go to an open house and like, surprise, you love it, the property so much that you guys are okay with moving forward a little bit sooner than planned. If you see something you want to put an offer in, just let me know. I can always go check it out myself. It's easy for me to sneak in for either a private showing, or often we'll have open houses on Saturdays and Sundays. So I may be able to go back and look at it. Any questions about all that?
No, I just want to point out to everybody watching, I liked the way you handled the non-urgent stuff with your business hours. So you're still available if someone wants to put an offer in. You're still available if they find a house that they have to get into, because you can pass it to your showing agent or whoever else. That was a very good script around that.
And it's been huge for my like mental sanity. It's really shifted my, like, especially with me feeling like my clients are going to be like, oh my gosh, if I don't get back to her, they're going to like hate me or whatnot. And it's changed that conversation to a lot of my clients are now like so respectful. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to text you like at 8:00, but like not urgent. When you get to it, can you send this? So they're like really, really respectful of my time now.
No, I like that. You're just setting the expectations for you guys to have a successful relationship. You're setting the expectation that you're the professional. That was a good way to handle it with the non-urgent stuff, because you're saying you want to see something, you want to negotiate on something, I'm still your girl, still call me. Exactly. But the other stuff can wait.
Okay, so that's all I have for my consultation. I would just
might have some questions.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, I would just follow up, okay, like, do you guys have any questions at all? Awesome. I'll get you everything sent over through .loop. If you have any problems signing it, just let me know. And then once you get everything signed, we'll get you set up on your search and started in the process. Okay, cool. So if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask questions or type into the chat box, happy to answer.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. It was awesome to watch. A lot of value, and Kimberlee, I love the presentation. So thank you.
Cool. Hi Patrick, happy birthday one day.
Thank you. Thanks guys.
Anybody else?
Hey Kimberlee.
Hi.
Hey, this is Shelby in Knoxville. Originally from Connecticut, so I'm giggling over the price differences. I had a question for you. When you have a client, kind of like Jen role played, where she wants to go client, but she's a little concerned. Can she look? Do you hold off creating that MLS search for them at that point?
Yeah, so I would say 97% of the time, they're like, oh, no brainer, like client. But every once in a while, I will get that skeptic or that like really high C that like wants to make sure they're doing their due diligence. And, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to work with anybody that isn't excited to work with me. So I'm not pressuring anybody. The way I handle it usually is like, oh, no problem. Like, if you guys want to think about it, that's totally fine. Take some time, do your research. Sometimes, like, this happened actually last week. They had come to when I say come, they attended my virtual home buying seminar. And then they reached out, said, hey, we're ready to get started. We did the whole presentation. And then they were like, oh, like they were a little confused. They didn't realize that there is such thing as like representation and non-representation. And they asked me, they're like, can you send us anything on this? So I was like, yeah, of course. I sent them that mandatory agency disclosure. We left it off as just no problem. Take your time. Just let me know if you guys decide that you want to get started with me. And I sent them a follow-up email. So great to chat with you. Here's that agency disclosure. Let me know if there's anything else I can answer for you. Sometimes those people also like might want to go back and like look at my reviews or whatnot. I have a link in my email signature that does show my reviews. And they got right back to me the next day and they were like, awesome, we've looked this over. We would love to get started. So like usually people that don't sign on the spot, they do end up signing. I just, at the end of the day, like there's so many buyers. So I only want to work with people that are really excited to work with me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Did that answer the question for you?
Well, I was also a little curious. You had talked about waiting to actually build their MLS search till you have the signed buyer rep back.
Yep.
And I haven't been good about that. I've been going ahead and doing it. And I really like your approach to that. What's your scripting around? Do you even go there with them, or do you just know I'm not going to build this for them until I have it back?
Yeah, I kind of like leave it as open as not really like an option. So I'll say like, I'm going to send you the docs. Once you sign it, we can get you set up on your search. That's kind of just what it is. And the rules are the rules.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, I had a question.
Hi.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. So does your buyer consult change when you have a buyer that is like a year out or like 6 months out? Do you go through all of this with them?
So I'm really, really big on getting in front of people as soon as possible, because I would say like so often I've had people say, oh, this is my timeline, and it ends up being like half of what they said because they get into the process. So I'll back up, and what I say like at my buyer events, so first time home buyer workshops, often like range of people. Some people ready to go, some people like 6 to 12 months, some people further out. I set it up that anybody that's within a year of making a purchase, let's set up a consultation. I just, like Gary says, I think it's like 90% of buyers go with the first agent they meet. So I want to insert myself at the soonest point in their search as I can. So anybody that's 12 months or less, I will do the consultation. The consultation itself doesn't change, but the way I script it is just like, okay, cool. Like what we're going to do is we're going to get you set up on a search so that you can start seeing those properties, because you'll start to see, like, especially if you're not very familiar with our market, get an idea of how much over asking stuff is selling for, and maybe we need to make adjustments to your budget. But I like to pitch it as like, I want to make sure that by the time you're ready to actually go out and start looking at properties, you're going to be one of the most educated buyers out there, because you'll have seen what stuff is going on for the market for, what it's selling for, and then you'll have really clear idea of what the market's doing by the time you are ready to go shop.
Amy, the other part of that would be I want my motivation to match your motivation. So we're going to still stay in front of you. And so I would check in if they say it's a year out. I would have it and have it again, like half. So 6 months and then half it again at the 3 month part. But I would be reaching out and occasionally have those touches be calls. Has anything changed since the last time we talked? You know, is there anything in your life that's changed that maybe has either moved up the time frame or moved back the time frame? Doesn't matter to me if they want to buy now or 2 years from now. I'm still going to be in the industry and I'm still going to, you know, want to help them. So just making sure that that communication is consistent. I mean, we've talked about the fortune is in the follow-up. So understanding that timelines move up all the time, and you just need to make sure you stay in front of them, whether that's you or somebody else on your team.
That's a really good point. And like, I have some buyers I'm working with right now that I've had them signed to buyer agency for 2 years. Like, people's timelines change all the time, but I like to get them set up on the MLS search because it's just an extra touch for me. Like, follow-up is not my forte. I'm really good at like finding the business, but I'm not as good as nurturing it. So every like system I can put in place that's just another touch is really helpful. And in addition to that, I can see how engaged they are. Like I can see how many times they're looking at properties, how often are they logging in, looking at what's getting sent to them. And then I'll set reminders periodically, like if someone's closer to that year mark, maybe every 3 months checking in. Do you want me to make any adjustments with your search? How's everything going? Do you want me to make any changes? What are you seeing that you like? And just having an excuse to like check in with them. And then, like Jen said, if it's like you're signing them on the closer to the year mark, then they're like looking, maybe you're 3 months out for them looking, I might just do a check-in, and it could even be as simple as a phone call, like, hey, I know you guys have seen properties for a little bit and you're starting to get more serious. Do you need to make any adjustments? How are things going? Has anything changed? All of that stuff.
And sometimes adding excitement back into it, say you get to that 6 month or 9 month mark and they're a year buyer. Well, now we've got to get them moving, right? Like we've got to get them excited. And so calling and being like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm so excited. Did you see the last house that I sent you? It actually looks like it's the perfect fit. What did you think? What was your opinion? And making sure that you have the high level of excitement so we can start to bring them back up here if it starts to dwindle.
Cool. Do you change it at all for people who are looking to buy like right now, ASAP buyers? Do you ever go through properties while you're on your buyer console or set up showings?
Not usually, unless I have occasionally, if they're like just curious, like they might tell me this and they'd be like, oh, what do you think? And I'll pull it up and be like, oh, see, here's the MLS. Here's what you have for options available. I think it's really realistic. A couple times I have, just based on like specific questions. But usually, like if someone's ready to go, sometimes they'll actually send me properties. Like we might have a phone call and then schedule the appointment, and they might follow up that phone call by sending me properties like, hey, here's an idea of a couple that we like, just so you have an idea. I tell people, like, go through, when you get the results, favorite stuff, because we have an option you can like favorite things, and I say to them, like, go through favorite stuff. It helps me get a good idea, because what I do every morning is I'll log in and I look through all the lists of properties that match all my clients' criteria, and I might see something before you see it, and so I'll send it to you. That's kind of my process, I guess.
This is so good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Cool. Well, it's 12:30, so I guess we'll wrap up. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Jen, thank you so much for being my client.
So fun. Next week, we're going to have Amy Bergen, who was just asking questions. She's going to do one on a buyer that has not been pre-qualified yet.
Woo.
So we'll get a few different presentations in here. If anybody has any questions, let us know. Hopefully it was a good resource. Kimberlee, thank you for sharing. That's stressful to do in front of a group of your peers, and you did such a great job. That presentation was awesome. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. You were a really intense client, so it was a little stressful. Like usually they're a lot more laid back than that. So.
My team hates when I come to script practice. It's fine. They all think the same thing, so it's fine.
So I'll upload the PDF of my buyer consult into the group, and I'll also upload the counseling form that I go through in the first half. So if anybody wants to see those and copy it, feel free to take that, and feel free to reach out to me.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.